The year was 1995, and the small-town hospital room smelled faintly of disinfectant and new beginnings. Angela, exhausted but glowing with a strange mix of fear and pride, held 5 tiny newborns in her trembling arms. Quintuplets, 5 fragile lives depending on her. The sound of their soft cries filled the air, but the space around her felt unbearably heavy, because the man she thought she could rely on was slipping away. He stood at the doorway, shoulders hunched, face clouded with uncertainty. The weight of fatherhood, multiplied by 5, pressed too hard on his heart. With one last glance, he turned and walked out, leaving the sterile white door swinging shut behind him. Angela's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't scream, didn't beg him to stay. Her heart broke quietly as she looked down at the babies, each one wrapped in thin hospital blankets. Fear clawed at her. How would she feed them, clothe them, protect them from a world that already felt so cruel? The whispers of the nurses outside spoke of pity, even doubt, but Angela silenced it all with one deep breath. She kissed each tiny forehead, letting her tears fall gently on their skin, and with a trembling voice, she whispered a promise that would shape all their lives: "I'll raise you alone." In that moment, the hospital room transformed. It was no longer just a place of abandonment, it became the birthplace of a mother's unbreakable resolve, a strength no absence could ever destroy. Angela's life quickly became a relentless rhythm of sacrifice and endurance. Morning started before the sun, packing bottles and laying out second-hand clothes, while night stretched into endless feedings and lullabies. With 5 infants depending on her, rest was a luxury she could never afford. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices during the day and waiting tables at night, returning home with aching feet and tired eyes, yet never once letting her children see defeat in her face. The small town watched her with a mix of sympathy and disbelief. Neighbors whispered, some calling her brave, others saying she would never manage. Still, Angela pushed an oversized stroller down cracked sidewalks, her head held high, 5 little faces peering out at the world with wide, curious eyes. People offered pity, but Angela refused to raise her children on pity. She chose dignity, love, and grit instead. Her kitchen became the heart of their home. Though the meals were often modest, soup stretched thin, bread slightly stale, the table was alive with laughter and chatter. Angela made sure her children felt rich, not in money, but in love. Each night, after tucking them into bed, she would sit in the quiet, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave, but her heart steady with purpose. She reminded herself that their future was worth every sacrifice. It was in these small, unseen battles that Angela's strength began to shine, not only shaping her children's lives but weaving a story of resilience the whole town would one day remember. As the years passed, the quintuplets grew into bright, lively teenagers, each carrying both the weight of their circumstances and the strength of their mother's love. But the world outside their home was not always kind. At school, whispers followed them down the hallways. Some classmates sneered, "No father, no future," while others mocked the size of their family, calling them a burden. The sting of those words cut deep, but instead of breaking them apart, the siblings grew closer, bound tightly by the struggles they shared. Angela became their anchor. Each evening, when her children returned home with wounded hearts, she gathered them around the same worn kitchen table and reminded them, "The world may doubt you, but I never will." Her voice carried a conviction that planted courage in their hearts. She pushed them to pursue their dreams, no matter how far-fetched they seemed, and the quintuplets listened. One excelled in sports, another found solace in music, one discovered a love for science, another thrived in literature, and the last developed a gift for helping others. Each child carved their own path, determined to prove wrong those who said they would never succeed. Despite the hardships, their home pulsed with warmth, laughter, and relentless hope. Angela's sacrifices were not in vain, she had sown seeds of resilience that blossomed in her children. What others saw as weakness, they turned into strength, slowly transforming their pain into a quiet, unstoppable force of determination. 30 years later, the small town that once pitted Angela now gathered in awe inside a brightly lit community hall. The room buzzed with pride as the quintuplets, no longer children but accomplished adults, stood on stage. A doctor, a teacher, an engineer, an artist, and a social worker, each had carved out a life of purpose, a living testament to their mother's sacrifice. Angela, her hair now silver, sat in the front row, her tired hands clasped tightly as tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, her children were honoring her publicly, celebrating the woman who had carried them through storms. The air shifted when the doors at the back of the hall creaked open. An older man, frail and weathered, stepped hesitantly inside. His eyes searched the stage until they found Angela and the children he had walked away from decades earlier. Whispers rippled through the crowd, gasps of recognition sweeping across the room. The quintuplets froze, shock etched across their faces. All the years of questions, anger, and silence seemed to collapse into that single moment. Yet before the crowd could judge, one of the siblings stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, he walked off the stage, crossed the hall, and embraced the trembling man. "You left us," he said softly, his voice breaking, "but we won't leave you. Mom taught us forgiveness." Tears streamed down Angela's cheeks as the audience rose to their feet. What could have ended in bitterness instead became a moment of grace, a turning point that left the entire room breathless. The hall grew silent as the father, his voice weak and trembling, finally spoke. "I never left because I didn't love you," he said, his eyes glistening as they scanned the faces of the children he had missed for 3 decades. "Back in 1995, the doctors told me I had a severe illness. They said I wouldn't live long. I thought leaving was sparing you the pain of watching me die. I thought it was best for you." His words cracked under the weight of regret. Gasps filled the room, but no one moved until Angela slowly rose from her seat. Her hands shook, but her eyes carried the same strength they had all those years ago. She stepped toward him, her children surrounding them like a circle of light. "It wasn't hate," she whispered gently, her voice breaking, "it was fear. But love brought us back together." In that moment, the bitterness of the past dissolved. The quintuplets pulled their father into their embrace, their arms wrapping around him and Angela both, forming a family that was broken but now, finally, whole. The crowd erupted in applause, some wiping away tears, moved by the sight of forgiveness winning over pain. What had begun as a story of abandonment transformed into one of reconciliation and hope. The truth that once threatened to shatter them now bound them together more tightly than ever. And as the applause filled the hall, one truth shone brighter than all others: love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds.